Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video I have a Game Week 8 wildcard draft for you, and in amongst the chaos and everything going on at the moment and not knowing whether the games will go ahead or not, I'm going to try and provide a little bit of clarity and calmness and help you start to think about a Game Week 8 wildcard. However, this video should be useful whether you plan on using your wildcard or not. If you do enjoy the video, please do drop a like, make sure to subscribe, but without further ado, let's jump into today's video. So I'm recording this on Sunday afternoon, ready for a Sunday evening release for you guys because I still want you to have content to watch. But of course, we don't know what's going to happen at this stage. Game Week 7 has been postponed. We don't know whether all of the games in Game Week 8 will be postponed. None of them, some of them. And to be honest, I don't know when we're going to find that out. You would assume sooner rather than later. But at the time of me recording this on Sunday afternoon, I don't know. And it's a good caveat to put in at this place. Just try and be a little bit patient with content creators at this time. Not just myself, but other FPL content creators that you watch this week. We're just going off the information that we have at this stage. And at the moment, we know very little. I don't actually know when we're going to find out. It could be later in the week. It could be as early as Monday morning. So here's the few things that we know at the time of me recording this. Just in case you're watching this later in the week, this is what I currently know. So we know that the Met Police will be working with the relevant partners and ensure that appropriate policing plans are in place if fixtures take place. So there is a worry that due to obviously everything going on with the funeral and all of the plans in London to obviously celebrate the Queen's life and for the funeral, there is going to be issues with shortages for policing for other events such as football matches. So there seems to be a belief on Twitter, and I do think this is probably quite accurate, that the London-based games have a reasonable chance of being called off. However, the Met Police have stated that they will work with the relevant partners and try to ensure that if the games do go ahead, that the appropriate policing will be in place. So that suggests that if the Premier League want the games to go ahead, then the Met Police will try to ensure the correct policing. And as a result, maybe the London-based games could go ahead. There have been discussions, I've seen an article on The Guardian and also The Athletic as well, about potentially switching the fixtures. So Chelsea play Liverpool, that could be switched to Anfield, and Spurs play against Leicester, so that could be switched to the King Power. So potentially those two fixtures could be switched. Of course, Brentford versus Arsenal they both play in London, so that might be an issue. I've seen some people suggest that maybe because Brentford isn't so central and it's quite a way out, maybe like the suburbs of London, maybe the game could go ahead. So it could be that they switch the Chelsea-Liverpool and the Spurs-Leicester game, and they keep the Brentford-Arsenal one, and as a result, all of the games go ahead. But there are discussions taking place that potentially they could switch. But as you can see here, everyone seems to be suggesting that's quite a big logistical call. And maybe the clubs won't be keen to host at short notice. And as a result, maybe that won't go ahead, especially with all of that, the travelling fans, etc. So basically, to put all of that together, at the time of recording this, my belief is, I think we're almost definitely going to have some games. That would be my belief at the moment. I think some of the games will go ahead in Game Week 8. Which ones I don't know and how many I don't know. I would say there's a reasonable chance of at least one of the London games being called off just due to the policing shortages and just due to the fact that London is going to be absolutely hectic across the weekend. Obviously, the funeral's on the Monday, but across the weekend as well, you expect that to have a knock-on effect. So if I had to guess now, I would say 7 games go ahead, and I would say Chelsea, Liverpool, Leicester, Arsenal, and Brentford, Arsenal, and Leicester, Spurs. Those 3 don't go ahead. Of course, Spurs do play on the Saturday, so obviously there's a smaller chance because it's further away from the funeral. Maybe the Spurs-Leicester game goes ahead. So we'll have to wait and see. I just wanted to provide some context to the video that I'm about to give you and the draft that I'm about to give you. The final thing is, I've seen a lot of people discussing that we might get an extra free hit because last season, when there were a few cancellations closer to Christmas, we did get an extra free hit given due to the COVID throwing up loads of postponements and rescheduling last minute. That was sort of 3 or 4 weeks in a row we had issues, and it was absolute chaos. I do think with the fact that everyone had Game Week 7 postponed, the fact that they were allowed to roll over some of the wildcards and cancel some of the chips that were activated, and due to the fact that I think we'll still have quite a few games going ahead in Game Week 8, I think we're much less likely this year to get an extra free hit. But there's still a small chance. We'll have to assess that. If we do get the extra free hit, I'll discuss the pros and cons of maybe popping the free hit this week and then saving your second free hit. But we'll discuss all of that. So the draft I'm going to show you today is based on the fact that we might not have the London games going ahead. However, I actually think that the draft that I would build would have very few players from the London-based games anyway. We know Arsenal's fixtures and Brentford's fixtures are both starting to turn for the worst. So I probably would have had a maximum of 1 player from Arsenal and Brentford. Chelsea do have decent fixtures, and I probably will have Reece James regardless, so that's something to think about. But maybe you don't want to double up on Chelsea. There's a good justification to drop Liverpool assets altogether, and this has probably given me the motivation to do so. So if the Liverpool-Chelsea game is called off, maybe we just drop our Liverpool assets, because they won't have a game in Game Week 8. They've got tricky fixtures moving forward, so that's something to think about. And then Leicester and Spurs, I don't think I would have had any Spurs anyway, maybe one. And Leicester, again, you can pick a Leicester player and just put them on the bench. So I guess my point is, regardless of whether the London-based games are called off anyway, I don't think it would change my draft too much. I don't think I would have gone for that many players from those 3 fixtures. So, with all of that being said, the context provided, let's now take a look at my Game Week 8, my current Game Week 8 wildcard draft. I should have mentioned in the previous section as well, just watching that back, that the Brighton Palace game, as far as we're concerned, will stay postponed. I've seen a few people, because the rail strikes have now been cancelled. If you didn't know, the rail strikes that caused the postponement have now been cancelled. So some people are saying they might reverse the postponement and now the game might be back on. I think with the fact that Brighton are currently managerless and currently sort of reacting to what's happened with Potter, they might not be particularly keen to put that fixture on. So I've got a feeling that fixture might stay postponed. If that fixture does get put back into Game Week 8 and that fixture is on, that might change a couple of the drafts that I've been going for, but that's something to consider as well. So the draft I'm about to show you is for Game Week 8. It's a 4-3-3, 0.9 million in the bank. And I'll just let you know now, we'll discuss the bench at the end, but there are a lot of expensive players on the bench because they don't have fixtures this week. So as you can see, just as an example, starting with Emerson in my team, this will be the only week where he's in my starting 11. It will usually be a bench player. But of course, because some of the teams I'm saying, if they've got a London-based game, they might not play. They're currently on my bench. So hopefully that does make sense. So as always, I'll just talk through each player and give a bit of justification as to why I'm currently looking at them. I do have the FPL site next to me just to look at some of the fixtures as well. So starting with sort of the double up in defence on the Newcastle defence, the reason for that, they've always got, under Eddie Howe, since he's taken over, they've got fantastic underlying data from a defensive perspective. They've been really good again this season. But I think not only are they a really decent defence with really good fixtures, and I mean the fixtures are absolutely excellent. If we just bring them up, they've got Bournemouth, Fulham, Brentford in 8, 9, 10, United and Tottenham in 11 and 12, but outside of that, Everton, Villa, Southampton. So really nice fixtures right up until the World Cup when we get unlimited transfers. Not only that, they both offer something really nice in and of themselves. So Pope offers the fact that, as I said in the last video, Newcastle actually concede one of the lowest XG per shot conceded in the Premier League. What that basically means is they're conceding a lot of shots from like outside the box and from difficult to score opportunities, which means Pope will make a lot of saves but not face that many big chances based on what we've seen thus far, which means that he's going to get those 11, 12 pointers if he keeps a clean sheet because he'll make quite a few saves, but very unlikely to concede. So I really like Pope for that reason. And then Trippier just offers a lot of attacking potential. He's on a lot of set pieces, corners. He's got great open play crossing, as we know. So I think both of them, I don't even think I'm necessarily considering it as a double up. I'm looking at Pope in and of himself is an excellent keeper. Trippier in and of himself is a fantastic defender. And they've got good fixtures. So I don't mind the fact that it is essentially a double up here. So those two have been in most of my drafts. I have looked at Gaeta in goal instead of Pope, but the issue is if the Crystal Palace-Brighton game doesn't go ahead in Game Week 8, I would have to play Everson or Ward, whoever's on my bench, and I don't particularly want to do that. So it's a bit of a shame that literally Game Week 8 is the main reason I can't go for Gaeta, but I do think the Pope is still an excellent option. Of course, the fact that Gaeta is £0.6 million cheaper does make me think that he could potentially be slightly better value. So that's something to consider if you don't mind playing someone like Ward in Game Week 8. But again, if the Tottenham Leicester game's called off, then you can't. So that's all something to consider there. It does depend on which fixtures go ahead. The rest of the defence does look a little bit strange. We'll go with Cancelo next because I think he'll be in a lot of people's drafts. I've discussed the fact that I love Cancelo and I think Cancelo is a fantastic FPL option. I'm not necessarily sure that this season thus far he's been worth the £7 million price tag. The issue is I still want to get into that Man City defence. I still think they're too good to not have a City defender. And due to injuries with the likes of Ake and Walker and Stones, and due to the fact that Diaz is 6 million, Edison doesn't make many saves at 5.5, there just aren't many good alternatives to Cancelo. So at the moment, he's in my team just because I don't like the cheaper options. And I wouldn't mind someone like a Diaz. But again, 6 million, you're only saving 1 million. It's not like Diaz is a £5 million defender. So for all of those reasons, I've still got Cancelo in my team, and he's been in pretty much all of my wildcard drafts. The other two defenders are very strange inclusions potentially. So let's start with Luca Dean. So the reason Luca Dean is in there is purely due to a fixtures perspective. So if we just have a quick look at the Aston Villa, sorry, I don't have the Aston Villa fixtures up. So Luca Dean is the next three: Southampton, Leeds, Forest, then Chelsea in 11, but you can bench him against Chelsea in 11, then Fulham and Brentford. So if you can get away with benching him in 11, it's Southampton, Leeds, Forest, Fulham, Brentford. Yes, the Villa defence haven't been fantastic. Yes, the injury to Matty Cash isn't ideal. But there is an international break coming up. Maybe Matty Cash will be fit after the international break. And I just think that with those fixtures coming up, he's always got pretty decent underlying data. I really don't mind a punt on Luca Dean. And I don't necessarily need to play him in every week either. So in that spot, I'm just looking for a player with decent fixtures that specific I can play this week because, again, I'll get onto this, but I've got Reece James on the bench who can come in after this. I've got some decent midfielders who can come in as well. So he doesn't even necessarily need to play beyond this week. So for that reason, I've currently got Luca Dean. I did look at Diogo Dalot in there. My issue with Dalot that I've got is that their fixtures are significantly worse than Aston Villa. So Dallow's got Leeds, City, Everton, Newcastle, Tottenham, Chelsea. So realistically, outside of Leeds and Everton, I don't really want to play Dalot. So it's really like a 1 week punt, and then you're maybe looking at a transfer after that. So considering I think the fixture's just as good for Luca Dean this week, he's got decent underlying data. I've currently got him in my team. I know he's an FPL troll. I know people don't like picking Luca Dean, but I don't see many other defenders that I would want to have both a decent fixture this week, decent fixtures long term, and they're not too expensive. I would love to have a Mark Gehi in here, but at the time of me recording this again, the Crystal Palace Brighton game is still postponed. And as a result, I can't put a Palace defender in there. So I've got Luca Dean for now. And then the fourth and final defender is Emerson against Everton away. He did score in the Europa Conference League. He looks fairly nailed for now. And I think he should play against Everton. It's a decent fixture. He's got decent attacking potential. Like I said, he did score midweek. And assuming this game goes ahead, which it should because it's Everton away at Goodison Park, I really like Emerson as an option. And then after this, he will be third bench or second bench almost every single week. So it's only this week that I really need to play him. And I still think he's a good bench option moving forward. And it just takes a little bit of money out of my defence so I can invest some money into the midfield and into the front three as well. So it might look a little bit strange. Once we get onto the bench, it might make a little bit more sense as to why I've picked this defence. Let's move on to the midfield though and look at those three midfielders. Last couple of weeks, we've been playing a 3-5-2, so to only see three midfielders does seem a bit strange, and to see three completely new midfielders to my team also seems a bit strange. But let me talk you through each of them and again discuss why they're in my team. We'll start with the premium, because almost always in my teams, this would be Salah. I've been very tempted to drop Salah anyway. We did discuss this in some recent videos. I said that the only reason I wouldn't want to drop Salah is I'm not necessarily convinced by the other options. De Bruyne, Son, Fernandes, Sterling, they could all offer fantastic value and they could be good moving forward. But I'm just not convinced at the moment. I haven't seen enough from them to back against Salah. If the Chelsea-Liverpool game is called off, and even if it's not, I might be tempted anyway, but if it is called off, obviously you miss that game. And then moving forward, again, the fixtures for Liverpool are they're not great at all. So they've got Chelsea in 8, Brighton in 9, I don't think it's a particularly easy fixture, although Liverpool do tend to beat Brighton. Then it's Arsenal, then it's City, then it's West Ham. After that, they have Forest and Leeds. So I think after that, you might want to be looking at getting some of your Liverpool assets back in. But do I think De Bruyne could outscore Salah, even if Salah does play in Gameweek 8 across those next few fixtures? Potentially, yes. And it does give me the opportunity to have another sort of decent option in Gameweek 8 when a lot of other people, if they don't wildcard, if they don't free hit, might be stuck with Salah, again, if the fixture is called off. If the fixture goes ahead, there's a small chance that I have Salah in there instead of De Bruyne and just continue to back Salah. But I do think De Bruyne could be a really decent option. And I do really like the fixture against Wolves in Game Week 8. So for now, De Bruyne is in the team. If the Spurs-Leicester games is on, I actually think that the premium I'd go for is Son. Now, Son's data's not been great. Son has not looked fantastic. He looks both fatigued. He also looks like he's a bit of a rotation risk. However, it's a really nice fixture against Leicester in 8. And sometimes you've just got to make a move before you see some sort of upturn in form. I've said this before, FPL isn't always about reacting. If you only ever react to events, you're always going to be behind the curve. Sometimes you've got to make a move before you see something. And Son is not a bad footballer. Son, it's not like Son doesn't know how to play under Conte. It's not like Son doesn't know how to play in a front three with Kulusevski and Kane. So one of these weeks, he's going to turn it around. He's going to have to. And sometimes you have to move before you see that. And I think that against Leicester in 8, it looks like a decent time to do so. So if the Spurs-Leicester game's on, I might go for Son. If the Chelsea-Liverpool game's on, maybe I'll go for Salah. But for now, just due to the fact that I think both of those games are at risk. And also, I just think De Bruyne is a fantastic asset. De Bruyne is the second premium in my team. I've also got Rashford in there. Rashford is a bit of a one-week punt. As we discussed with Dallow's fixtures, they're not great moving forward. But he does have Leeds, and I think it's like Everton in Game Week 10. So there's decent fixtures coming up for Man United. And I can get away with benching him in Game Week 9 when they play against Man City, because Man United and Man City play against each other in 9. So Rashford, again, a bit of a one-week punt against Leeds. But if he does well against Leeds, and I want to keep him longer term, I don't have an issue doing so. I could quite easily, if the Arsenal-Brentford game does go ahead, I did have Martinelli in my team as well at one point, so I could just stay with Martinelli. Again, pretty tricky fixtures moving forward, but it's that sort of one-week punt in that spot. Martinelli against Brentford could be a decent option too, but for now, just due to the limited options we've got, I don't mind Rashford at all. And his underlying data's actually been pretty decent for Manchester United, especially if he continues to start in that number 9 role. And then the third midfielder is, again, someone that will be on the bench a lot of weeks, but just due to the fact that all of the players on my bench don't have fixtures at the moment, it's actually Andreas against Nottingham Forest. But he's really not playing like a £4.6 million midfielder. He's on a lot of set pieces. He's getting into some fantastic positions. And this is arguably one of the best fixtures you could hope for. So I have absolutely no issue at all starting Andreas in Game Week 8. And most of the wildcard drafts I've built, even if the London-based games do go ahead, actually have Andreas starting in Game Week 8. So I think if you're in a position where you have to start him, I do not think that is an issue at all. And I actually think that sometimes we're biased by the price. If Andreas was 6 million, you probably wouldn't own him. But say he was hypothetically 6 million, and hypothetically you did own him at 6 million, you would have no issue starting him most weeks. It's only the fact that he's so cheap that I feel like sometimes we feel like we shouldn't be starting such a cheap player. But as a result, that midfield 3 I think is really nice. Rashford, De Bruyne, Andreas. I think even if you were on a free hit, you could make justifications to have those 3 anyway. So the fact that I've got them on a wild card, I can save my free hit, and it looks like a free hit midfield anyway. I don't have any issues with that. Let's now move on to the forward line, have a look at the bench, which will give some more context to the overall team. So the front 3 might seem fairly obvious. Well, I think at least 2 of them will be in pretty much everyone's wildcard drafts for both Game Week 8 and Game Week 9. But I think it's that third spot which is a little bit more interesting. But Haaland will continue to stay in my team. Even if he starts to get rotated a little bit more, I don't see many other options that I would want to go for. And I do think that I would probably captain him in Game Week 8 if all of the fixtures go ahead. Even if the London-based games go ahead, I think Haaland would most likely be my captaincy option this week. So Haaland stays. I think Mitrovic is a really obvious option just with the fixtures that Fulham have coming up, specifically such a nice fixture in Game Week 8 against Forest. I really don't mind having the double up of Andreas and Mitrovic there. And I just think long term, I'm going to want Mitrovic probably up until the World Cup unlimited transfers. So I think that's a fairly obvious pick. We did discuss this in the Game Week preview video last week. He's got some of the best underlying data in the league. It's about a 0.87 non-penalty expected goal involvement. So removing penalties, he's still got absolutely elite underlying data. He showed such great underlying data last year in the Championship too. I see no reason why that wouldn't continue, and he just looks like such an undervalued option this year. The third option is the tricky one because you can go for Tony if the Brentford-Arsenal game is going ahead. You could go for Dominic Solanke, who looks like a really good cheap option at 5.7. But I've currently got Isak in there. It does form a Newcastle triple up, which some people might say is a little bit overkill, but I think you need to consider defenders and attackers from the same team as almost separate entities. Yes, you have 3 Newcastle assets, but Pope and Trippier I don't think should be considered in the same vein as Isak. I think you look at the defence and then you look at the attack, and I think both look pretty good for Newcastle. I definitely think the defence is slightly better, but I just think Isak in the past has shown good underlying data. So far in his very limited minutes that he's played, it's been like 153 minutes, he's showing really good underlying data again. He's had a couple of big chances, and even once Wilson's back in the team, I still expect Isak to play most minutes. And I think Eddie Howe will find a way to get both Wilson and Isak into the starting 11. So I just think it's a really nice punt. Bournemouth at home this week looks like a really nice fixture. The fixtures long-term are pretty decent, as we discussed with Trippier and Pope. So yeah, it feels like a fun pick as the third pick. I feel like the safer pick would be Tony if the game goes ahead. And I feel like maybe the more sensible pick would take a little bit of money out that front line and go for maybe like a Solanke as your third striker. I just fancy Isak. I think he's a really, really good option moving forward. And he's a bit of a fun pick. And yeah, I guess I just want to pick him, and that's the reason for that. As you can see, probably the big talking point is that I've got a hell of a lot of money on my bench at the moment. So it could be Ward, it could be Everson as your second goalkeeper. I don't really mind at the moment. There's only a £0.1 million difference, and they probably won't play most weeks. So maybe I'll have Everson in there. I've got Zaha, James, and Maddison on the bench at the moment. Now, assuming the London-based games don't go ahead, none of my bench would have any fixtures as a result. Of course, Ward wouldn't, James wouldn't, and Maddison wouldn't. And unless the Crystal Palace-Brighton game is reversed, Zaha wouldn't either. I don't think that's an issue. I look at my starting 11, I would expect all of them to start. The only one I would maybe be slightly worried about is Emerson, but I don't see any reason why he wouldn't start based on the back of his performances and the injuries they've got. So I think all of my 11 players should start. You could say that maybe it's not worth taking a risk on a wildcard. Just replace one of Zaha or Maddison with another player, and then at least you've got a little bit of bench cover. You can drop Emerson to the bench, maybe put Bailey as an example. Put Bailey into the starting 11 instead of Zaha Maddison. That gives you a bit of money in the bank. You can have Bailey in there against Southampton, which is a really nice fixture, and then you can decide next week whether you want to go to a Zaha or Maddison. That might be the play that I go for. And someone who very nearly made it into this draft was actually Jared Bowen. So Jared Bowen is 8.1 million. They've got Everton away. I could quite easily drop one of Zaha or Maddison for Bowen, I could then put Bowen into the starting 11, put Emerson on the bench, and then you've got a really nice player in Bowen for game week 8. And also the fixtures moving forward for West Ham are very strong too. The reason I currently don't have Bowen is his non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90 this season is 0.17. That is absolutely shocking. If you don't follow underlying data, that is really, really, really bad. It's not even good enough for sort of like a £4.5 million midfielder. So that's the reason Bowen's not in there, is that we've seen nothing this season to justify picking him. Now, West Ham as an entity have been a very poor team. So maybe it could be that Bowen's poor form is making West Ham struggle, or it could be West Ham's poor form is the reason that Bowen is struggling. There's a bit of causality issue there, but it's up to you to decide there. I just haven't seen enough from Bowen at the moment to justify it, but it is a really nice punt. And if you don't like him, if he looks, again, really poor in game week 8, maybe then you just go to Maddison or Zaha. But I feel like you're almost booking in a transfer there, and I'm not necessarily sure I'm a fan of that. So that is something to consider there. If you do want to go for a Bowen, that could be a nice punt, and it also gives you a little bit of bench cover. But this is the wildcard team. I know it looks really strange. The reason for that is, of course, I've got a lot of money invested in the defense, onto the bench. And at the moment, the likes of Emerson, Andreas, Luca Dean, that maybe wouldn't always be in the starting 11, are currently there. But remember, moving forward, those players would drop to the bench. Let me know in the comments down below. What would you change with this draft? Is there anything that you don't like about it? Is there anything that you would change? I do think that it would largely stay the same for a game week 9 wildcard as well. I would probably drop Luca Dean, and maybe you would move about. Maybe you would go for a Salah instead of a De Bruyne if you go for a game week 9 wildcard. But I think largely it will stay the same. So even if I don't activate the wildcard in game week 8 and activate it in game week 9, I think it will largely look very similar. There'll just be a few subtle changes. Of course, once we know more about whether the games will be going ahead in London and just in general in Game Week 8, I'll do some kind of updated video. It might be an updated draft. It might just be sort of a video of me chatting about the events and the fixtures that are going ahead. But there will be content throughout the week. We are trying our best as content creators to still provide you with entertainment and also the best job we can possibly to provide you with advice with all of the chaos going on at the moment as well. But let me know down below what you think of my wildcard draft. So guys, just very briefly, I just wanted to show you what the team would look like over the next just couple of weeks to show you, because it looks very strange in game week 8, right? Because I'm playing a lot of players that would usually be on the bench. So I want to show you what the team looks like moving forward and why I still think it's very well set up. So I'm actually using the Fantasy Football Hub My Team feature. As you can see at the top of your screen, for as little as £2.10 per month, you can get pretty much full access to the entire site. Loads of cool features on there, including the My Team feature as well. So first link in the description will take you there. It is an affiliate link, so it supports the channel, which obviously I do really appreciate, but also you get access to what is, in my opinion, the best tool in fantasy football at the moment. So this is how we'd look in game week 9. We've got a 94% team rating over the next 5 game weeks, which is really strong. 89% in game week 9, which again looks really, really good. So post international break, assuming there are no major issues, the team looks great. We've actually got Maddison coming in against Nottingham Forest at home. We've got Zaha coming in against Chelsea at home, which isn't ideal, but the fixtures after that for Palace is so good, which is why I've started with Zaha on the wildcard draft. And then the rest of the team's really good. Isak, Mitrovic, Trippier, Luca Dean, James, all got decent fixtures. We've got them triple up of Man City against Manchester United, which you could say isn't ideal, but I back City to do fairly well in that game. And then even on the bench, you've got Andreas against Newcastle, or you've got Rashford against Man City. So at this point, maybe we take Rashford out, or we could just play Andreas if we needed to. So the team's looking really strong for game week 9. I don't see any obvious transfers that I would need to make. And if we go into game week 10, the team's looking even better. 93% team rating for game week 10. We've got all of our major players in there. We've got Zaha against Leeds, Maddison against Bournemouth, Mitrovic against West Ham, Isak against Brentford at home. And we've even got Trippier against Brentford at home on the bench at the moment, just due to the fact that Luca Dean's got Nottingham Forest. But if you fancied playing Trippier there, you absolutely could as well. So again, team's looking really strong for game week 10. Yes, there is an absence of Liverpool. But remember, the Liverpool fixtures are Chelsea, Brighton, Arsenal, City, West Ham. I back a lot of these players to do as well as, if not better than, the Liverpool assets over that period. Of course, they have got Thiago and Matip coming back, so maybe it's something to consider. Maybe we want to keep either a Trent or a Salah in there. We always have the option of making one downgrade. For example, downgrading Trippier or downgrading Isak to Solanke, and that would allow us to do De Bruyne back to Salah. So if we feel like we're missing out on a Liverpool asset, we can do that. Game week 11 is a slightly trickier week. Oh, we'll just skip back to game week 11. This is probably the trickiest week, but I've built several wildcard drafts, and pretty much all of them really aren't ideal, particularly for game week 11. So it's going to be one of those that we just maybe have to suck up and accept that we're not going to have an ideal team there. Liverpool play against Manchester City, Newcastle play against Manchester United. So there are a few matchups that you might not necessarily want. Maybe at this stage we drop Isak. We could easily drop Isak. We could drop Trippier. We've got Andreas against Bournemouth as well on the bench as well, so we could easily bring Andreas in. So I'm not too stressed. But anyway, the team's looking really good right up until unlimited transfers. I just wanted to show you that from Game Week 9, we're going to be getting the likes of Maddison, Zaha and Reece James back into the team. And the likes of maybe like an Emerson, Andreas, maybe a Luka Dean or a Rashford, they'll drop to the bench most weeks. So the team does look really good moving forward. Like I said, let me know what you do and don't like about the wildcard draft. Let me know what you change. And also let me know what any of your dilemmas are for the upcoming game week. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 8 wildcard draft. I do hope you're enjoying the content, and I do apologize if it's a bit of a mess and things change very quickly. I'll do my best to get updated content out for you throughout the week and still do my best to provide the best possible advice for you too. But if you do appreciate the content still coming out on a Sunday evening, please do drop a like. We're going to still try and hit 1,000 likes, but I think that's slightly optimistic at the moment with everything going on. But if you are watching this still and you've enjoyed the video, please do drop a like. Please do subscribe as well. We've already hit 30,000 subscribers, which was a massive milestone to hit. So I thank you very much, but we're going to continue to kick on, and the next one is 35,000. Until next time, guys, thank you very much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.